Part 1. It's funny. I built a career around helping people rebuild trust. Couples on the verge of collapse would sit across from me, tissues in hand, voices shaking, and I'd walk them back from the edge. I'd show them the way to heal. I was damn good at it. But somehow, I didn't notice when my own marriage began bleeding out. My name's Michael. I'm a relationship psychologist, author of 2 books on emotional repair, frequent podcast guest, occasional keynote speaker, and until recently, husband to Deborah, PR executive, fierce, intelligent, charming in that effortlessly cool way that always made me feel like I'd married up. We didn't have kids, by choice. We had plans, travel, growth, indulgent freedom. It worked for us. Or so I thought. For the first several years, our marriage felt solid. Not a fireworks show, maybe, but consistent. Reliable. We laughed, argued in fair tones, made up over takeout and Netflix. We were the couple that held hands in public without realizing it. We had a rhythm. That rhythm began to break without a clear reason. Like a record with a scratch you don't notice at first. Deborah started working late. A lot. West Coast client, she said. Late meetings. Reasonable. Logical. Except it became 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. She'd walk in past 11, drop her bag, and mumble something about being exhausted before heading straight to the shower. The first time she did that, I didn't think much of it. The second time, I raised an eyebrow. By the 4th, I was staring at the closed bathroom door with a knot in my gut and no explanation for it. Her phone habits changed, too. She used to leave it anywhere: kitchen counter, nightstand, charging on the hallway table. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand or tucked safely into her bag. Face down. Always on silent. Once, I joked, "What? You working for the Pentagon now?" She smiled, tight-lipped, and said, "You wouldn't believe the drama at work." There was distance between us that hadn't been there before. The way she pulled away when I touched her. The way she stopped asking about my day. Sex was rare. When it did happen, it felt rushed. Mechanical. I began to feel like I was intruding on something sacred just by being close to her. One Friday evening, I offered to bring dinner to her office. She was working late, again. I thought it was a kind gesture. She responded like I'd offered to show up naked in her boardroom. "Please don't," she said quickly. "We're deep in planning mode. It's chaos." So I didn't. But that was when something shifted in me. Not anger. Not yet. Just awareness. A hum in the back of my skull that said, "Start paying attention." And I did. There were new clothes, nothing outrageous, but items I hadn't seen before. More fitted. More purposeful. She had receipts from restaurants we hadn't visited. There was a new cologne in the air when she hugged me goodnight, not hers, not mine. Faint, but there. Then there were the excuses. She couldn't join me at a conference in Chicago because of client emergencies. She missed our anniversary dinner. Claimed she had sent flowers to my office. They never arrived. And I let it all slide. Because the alternative, that Deborah was hiding something, doing something, was too ugly to name. I remember folding laundry one Saturday, watching a blouse I didn't recognize fall out of the dryer. Black, silky, low-cut. The kind of thing she hadn't worn for me in years. When I asked, she said, "Oh, that? Just something I grabbed for a work event." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe everything. But belief doesn't hold up when it's stacked against patterns, against instincts, against the steady erosion of closeness. One night I reached for her in bed, desperate not even for sex, but for something: connection, affirmation. She turned away. "Not tonight," she muttered, already halfway asleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, my chest hollow, my fist clenched beneath the sheets. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing happened. Kissed my cheek. Asked about my weekend plans. Like we were strangers playing house. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I wasn't ready for confirmation. Because I still had hope. And because part of me, maybe the most foolish part, wanted her to come clean on her own. But deep down, I knew. There was someone else in our marriage. And she wasn't going to be the one to say it first. Part 2. I didn't set out to question my wife. Not seriously. I'm not wired that way. I believe in trust. I preach it. I built my career on it. So when Jake, my best friend since undergrad, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Man, I think Deborah's stepping out on you," my first reaction wasn't anger. It was laughter. "You're insane," I told him, waving it off like a fly. "You know Deborah. She's not like that." Jake didn't smile. That's exactly what I said about my ex. Right before I caught her in a hotel with her trainer. I rolled my eyes. "She's just been busy." That new client. He raised a hand. Mike, I'm not trying to mess with your head, but you're not yourself lately, man. You're on edge. You haven't mentioned her once in the way you used to. You really think that's nothing? I shrugged, uncomfortable. Things have been weird, sure. But cheating? Come on. He leaned forward, voice low. You ever thought maybe she's not working late? I didn't respond. Because yes, I thought it. But only in passing. In the same way someone thinks they left the stove on after they already know they didn't. She loves me, I finally said. Jake sat back. Okay. Then prove me wrong. I left that conversation bitter. I wanted to be mad at him, but I couldn't. Because the seed had already been planted, and deep down, it had roots. I told myself he was projecting, that I wasn't him, and Deborah wasn't his ex. But once the idea was there, it was impossible to unsee the cracks. The late nights, the phone glued to her hand, the way she flinched when I came up behind her in the kitchen, like she'd just shut a tab in her mind. I started to pay attention. She claimed she was working late again. I believed her. Mostly. But I made a quiet note of the time she left and the time she returned. 11:30. A little late for office meetings, even with West Coast clients. Still, I said nothing. The next day, I asked how the campaign was coming along. She smiled, the kind of smile people use in hostage videos. Oh, you know, the usual chaos. I asked who she was working with. She rattled off names I didn't recognize, then changed the subject. Jake's voice echoed in my head. Prove me wrong. I didn't snoop. Not at first. But I did start paying closer attention. Where her stories overlapped. Where they didn't. Like how she said she had sushi with her team on Tuesday, but the receipt I later found in her jacket pocket was from a wine bar. 2 glasses of Pinot. 1 appetizer. Beth and I needed a drink, she said when I asked. She didn't even blink. I smiled. Must have been a quiet night. Oh, totally. We were just talking about work. You'd have been bored. I believed her. But I also remembered that Beth was out of town. I'd seen her Instagram story. Still, I said nothing. Because I'm not the jealous type. I'm the guy who believes in his wife. But then came the voicemail. I walked into the room as she was listening to something. When she saw me, she jumped, thumb stabbing the screen, deleting it mid-word. I didn't even ask. She noticed. Just spam. These robocalls are getting clever. Yeah, I said. Very personal-sounding spam. She laughed and kissed my cheek. You're cute when you get suspicious. I forced a grin. You're lucky I trust you. She leaned close. You always say that. That night, I lay awake wondering why it suddenly felt like a threat. Still, I pushed it down. I told myself Jake was wrong. That I was imagining things. That Deborah was just tired. Just stressed. Just preoccupied. Then came the moment I couldn't unsee. I was doing laundry again and found a hotel card key in her coat pocket. No note. No explanation. Just a small white card tucked in the lining like a ghost trying not to be found. I stared at it for a long time. When I asked about it, she didn't even pause. Oh, that must be from that offsite I told you about. I stayed over with the team so we could get an early start. You remember, right? I nodded slowly. Right. The team meeting. She smiled. God, that was a long night. You should have seen us, 5 of us crammed in one conference room with 1 pizza. Real glamorous. She walked away, humming. But here's the thing. I do remember her telling me about an offsite. I just also remember that she came home that night. Said they canceled it last minute. That's when I knew. It wasn't proof. Not in the way a photo or a text thread would be. But it was the first piece of something real. Something undeniable. Because either she was lying then, or she was lying now. And either way, she was hiding something. Part 3. The truth came on a Tuesday. Tuesdays always felt like filler. Not close enough to the weekend to be exciting. Not far enough from Monday to feel like progress. Just a bland, in-between day. Maybe that's why she picked it. Maybe that's why it hurts so much. The manila envelope was waiting on my desk when I came home from a session. No return address. Just my name, scribbled in hurried black ink. The kind of handwriting you see in court exhibits. Inside were photos. 8 of them. Glossy. Sharp. Deborah. My wife. In a hotel room I recognized. Same neutral walls, same abstract art I'd seen in countless business trips. She was laughing in one. Sitting on the edge of the bed in another, barefoot, wine glass in hand. In the next, a man stood behind her, his hands around her waist. I stared at that one the longest. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the hint of a jaw, a wristwatch I didn't recognize, a posture far too comfortable with her skin. Then came the last three. No pretense, no deniability. Her on top of him, her eyes closed, her hands in his hair. The final photo captured her face, tilted back, mid-laugh, like she was having the time of her life. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, still in my office chair, my hands shaking as I slowly slid the photos back into the envelope one by one. It wasn't rage that hit me. It was cold, like someone had cracked my ribs and dumped ice water straight into my lungs. For 15 minutes, I couldn't move. I couldn't even think. Just sat there with my pulse drumming in my ears and the world suddenly rewritten. She had lied to me. Repeatedly. Convincingly. And I believed her every time. I checked the timestamp on the photos. They were from 3 nights ago. The same night she came home with pad thai and a tired smile. The same night she said she was in a client meeting. She'd come home and kiss me after that. I thought about that kiss now. The taste of it. The weight. I stood up. Moved like I was sleepwalking. I walked into the bathroom, splashed water on my face, stared at myself in the mirror. For someone who counseled people through betrayal, I looked exactly how I warned them they'd feel: a hollow, dull-eyed, broken. I could hear her voice in my head. You're just being paranoid. I'd never hurt you. You're sweet when you're suspicious. Every word was a knife in hindsight. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't want her lies. I didn't want her tears. I didn't want the theater of denial and excuses. I wanted facts. I wanted silence. So I picked up the burner phone I had hidden in my drawer, a second line I'd bought 2 weeks ago, when my gut started gnawing at me harder than I could ignore. I called the number of the private investigator Jake had recommended. The guy had been on standby. Michael, he answered. I was about to call you. Why? I got what you asked for. There was a pause. It's worse than you think. He sent over a folder. Digital this time. Photos. Voice recordings. GPS data. Deborah had been seeing him for months. Same hotel. Same pattern. Same carefully planned lies. His name was Darren, of course it was. Something smug and polished like that. Director at some tech firm, recently divorced, liked red wine and jazz bars and apparently married women. One recording stuck out. The PI had planted an audio device in her car. She was on the phone, laughing, talking about me. He's harmless, she said. Honestly, he'd never suspect a thing. He's too sweet. Too soft. I stopped the recording. Too sweet. Too soft. I sat there, fist clenched, jaw tight. I felt every part of me screaming to react, to do something, anything. But I didn't. Because I was past the explosion. There was no room left for rage. Only strategy. That night, I said nothing. She came home late, again. Kicked off her shoes, tossed her bag on the floor. Hey, she said, leaning in to kiss me. I let her. How was work? I asked, deadpan. She rolled her eyes. The usual. I need a drink. I nodded. Kitchen stocked. She disappeared into the other room. I stood there, frozen, every word she said sounding like it came through glass. Distant. Fragile. Breakable. And for the first time, I saw her clearly, not as the woman I married, but as a stranger wearing her skin. Later, we lay in bed, her back to me, her breathing even. Peaceful. Like nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, planning. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to throw her out. I didn't need to cry. What I needed was precision. What I needed was time. She didn't know it yet, but I was done being the good boy. Part 4. There's a certain power in restraint. Not the type you learn in textbooks or even therapy rooms. I'm talking about the kind that comes after betrayal, the quiet, surgical kind that doesn't scream or slam doors. It just waits, observes, plans. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I'm a psychologist. I know the weight of words and the damage of reckless action. Deborah would never see me lose control. That would have been a gift to her. A way to frame me as reactive, unstable. No. She'd get something far worse, complete composure. By day, I played the doting husband. Made coffee. Laughed at her jokes. Let her walk around the house wrapped in lies while I took notes. By night, I met with my lawyer, a brilliant woman named Serena who specialized in high-net-worth divorces and corporate fraud. Because by now, it was no longer just infidelity. It was theft. It was deception on a level I didn't think Deborah capable of. But I was wrong. The shared savings account, that had been our financial cushion, mostly funded by my early book sales and keynote honorariums, was almost empty. I hadn't checked it in months, trusting she was just managing the money. I didn't think I had to monitor someone I loved. Turned out, Deborah had been draining it, bit by bit. Over $30,000 in marketing expenses and personal consulting invoices sent to herself under the alias of a shell company. The name of the company? Brightleaf Strategies, LLC. I'd seen it before. Tucked in the footer of an email she accidentally opened in front of me. I had remembered it because I asked what it was, and she smiled and said, "Oh, just a potential client. Nothing locked in yet." She lied to my face as if it were nothing. I traced the money trail. Brightleaf had a secondary owner, Darren McConnell, the man from the hotel photos. Tech consultant. Divorced. Sleaze in a suit. She hadn't just slept with him. She'd built a business with him. Funded it with our money. And worse, positioned herself as the sole public face while Darren held the silent share. They were preparing to take on clients I helped refer. People who trusted me. Who would have no idea the person behind the curtain was using me to validate their scam. It was a career betrayal. I had never felt anything colder. Serena and I assembled the legal equivalent of a tactical strike. We filed an injunction to freeze the Brightleaf account under a claim of marital asset misappropriation. We drafted a breach of fiduciary trust case. And we pulled in a forensic accountant, just in case Deborah got creative with hiding what was left. But I didn't serve her yet. No, I waited. Because Deborah had been planning something big. She was chairing a major PR networking gala, one she'd talked about for months. Guest lists stacked with local executives, potential clients, influencers, press. Her moment. Her spotlight. And I was still, technically, the supportive husband. She spent the week rehearsing speeches in the mirror, adjusting her dress, asking me how she looked. I told her she looked perfect. She did. But that night wouldn't belong to her. It started with champagne. Clinking glasses. A warm glow in the room as people settled in. Deborah took the stage, beaming, radiant under the lights. She gave a charming opening. Thanked the sponsors. Introduced me as her other half, the heart behind the work I do. I took the stage. The room clapped politely. She handed me the microphone, kissed my cheek, and stepped aside. I smiled. "Thank you, Deborah," I began, voice calm. "I want to speak briefly tonight, not as a psychologist or an author, but as a partner. A husband. Someone who, until recently, believed in transparency." There was a shift in the room. A subtle stillness. I've always believed that relationships are built on truth. That love requires accountability. Deborah's smile faltered. And sometimes, the people closest to us use that belief to hide, to siphon, to lie. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder. Not dramatic, just deliberate. I set it on the podium. In this folder are documents outlining a shell company created by my wife and her business partner. It was funded without my knowledge using marital assets. Tonight, legal action has already been initiated. This folder is not for her. It's for our sponsors, our friends, and anyone else considering doing business with Brightleaf Strategies. Gasps. Whispers. Someone's phone lit up. Deborah stepped forward, face pale. "Michael, what the hell are you?" I turned to her. "I'm done pretending, Deborah. I respected your space, your decisions, your autonomy. But now I respect myself." She tried to speak again, but nothing came out. I left the stage to silence. Walked past her, past the crowd, past the applause that never came. Later that night, while she fielded calls and damage control, I was home. Calm. Focused. No screaming. No chaos. Just strategy. Part 5. 3.5 months. That's how long it took for the dust to settle, not to clear, but to settle. Deborah's life collapsed like a house of cards caught in a hurricane, and I didn't have to lay a finger on it after the reveal. Truth did the heavy lifting. Truth and time. The business tanked. Clients vanished. Darren disappeared into the same shadows he came from. She tried to salvage Brightleaf, but no one in the industry wanted to touch it. Too messy. Too many unanswered questions. Her name was radioactive, and she had no one left to burn with her. Well, almost no one. She tried texting at first. Paragraphs filled with false clarity, half-baked apologies, and just enough passive guilt to make it seem like I had driven her to it. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just lost myself. We were growing apart. I never stopped loving you. Not really. I never answered. Not once. She showed up unannounced 2 weeks later. I saw her through the window before she could knock. Standing there with her makeup perfect, her expression rehearsed. I didn't open the door. I just watched her for a full minute before walking away. That was enough. That silence was the last thing I gave her. I moved out a week later, out of the house we built, the life we curated. I left behind the furniture, the decor, the wine glasses we never used anymore. Let her decorate her ruin however she wanted. The walls were never mine again after I found out. I kept my office space but changed everything else. New routines, new grocery stores, new locks on my life. I took a break from therapy clients, just a few weeks to get my footing back, but the silence was loud. Grief isn't just pain, it's the absence of what used to fill the room. I wasn't looking to rebuild. I just needed to survive. But that's when the twist came. It was a Tuesday. Rainy. I was grabbing coffee at this quiet place I'd found near my new place. Minimal eye contact, good espresso, forgettable music. That's when I saw her. Not Deborah. Her. Emily. My assistant of 5 years. Loyal, focused, always professional. She quit 3 weeks after the divorce went public. No explanation. Just a short, cold resignation letter and silence. She looked surprised to see me. I offered a polite smile. She hesitated, then sat down across from me. "I owe you an apology," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. I knew. That was all it took to split the moment wide open. She had known about the affair for months. Deborah had confided in her early, played it off as something emotional, something complicated. Emily didn't approve, but she didn't tell me either. Said it wasn't her place. Said she didn't want to get in the middle. And when I saw you defend her so blindly week after week, she trailed off. I couldn't handle it. It felt wrong to keep working for someone who trusted me when I wasn't honest with him. I nodded slowly. "You could have said something." "I know. But I also know you. You respected her boundaries. And I thought, maybe you'd respect mine." It wasn't anger that hit me. It was exhaustion. Another person. Another silence. Another betrayal packaged as politeness. I finished my coffee. Told her I appreciated her honesty. Then I walked out. Because closure is an ode. It's chosen. Since then, I've built a new rhythm. I'm working again. Writing more. Saying no to things that don't bring peace. I don't pretend to be healed. I'm not. I still wake up some nights thinking she's next to me. I still hear her laugh in old songs. I still catch myself wondering when it all started instead of why. But I'm not stuck anymore. The hardest part wasn't leaving her. It was leaving the version of myself who needed to believe her. That man? He was kind, loyal, patient, too patient. He believed love could fix anything. Now, I know better. Love doesn't fix betrayal. Love doesn't make someone honest. Love, at its worst, is a weapon in the wrong hands, and I handed mine to a woman who sharpened it every night while I slept. There is no fairy tale ending here. No new lover. No soft sunrise with a second chance wrapped in silk sheets. There's just me. Me in the silence I've reclaimed. Me in the walls that no longer echo her name. Me in the steel spine I grew in the ruins. And if she ever shows up again, if anyone ever shows up again, I'll look them in the eyes and ask, "Do you know what loyalty costs?" Because I paid in full. And I don't give discounts anymore. The end.